to kick off the tip-off with Noah and Gage here, recording, coming at you with the West Virginia off-season. So going over coaching staff, new recruits we got in, transfer portal players, just looking at what this roster and what the culture will be in Morgantown. Gage, you got any thing to say heading in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a revamped coaching staff along with a revamped roster, really. I mean, some key pieces that we lost, but we also added a lot of really talented mid-major guys and even some SEC talent. So a really different vibe to this year's team, obviously, compared to last year. Fresh faces everywhere.
Agree with that. Maybe the newest, not so fresh face. We've seen him in the past, but the biggest news of the offseason is gaining Rich Rodriguez as the new coach. Neil Brown out, Rich Rod in. Love seeing that. Going over the staff a little bit, Zach Alley is poached from the SEC, comes from Oklahoma. That's going to be the defensive coordinator this year. Looking at Travis Trickett as senior offensive assistant. So just in key piece, we all know Rich Rod's going to be the OC. He's going to call his own plays, call his own shots. But looking at it,
means so much to him, he won't even give the offensive coordinator title.
Even the title. So. Just to even say, I think that's what Neil Brown did with Chad Scott. He wouldn't even do that. He's the guy. He's our offense. Rich Rod will put the pieces in there. Another big hire, Gage, I think you're a fan of. I'll let you get into it here. Jack Bicknell.
Yeah, offensive line coach. I believe you said the connection there was
Ole Miss.
Where was it? Ole Miss with Coach Rod, correct?
Yes, sir.
Rich Rod. So, yeah, a huge get. Some of the pieces that we're going to describe later on this offensive line really kind of fits his mold and Rich Rod's kind of style of play as well, of just like physical offensive line play. And, you know, I think out of everything WVU football, as far as running backs and offensive line, those were kind of the two places where we didn't really struggle in the Neil Brown era.
Yeah, and I think that was a lot of people were very interested to see Rich Rod go away from the offensive line coach where Neil Brown was here. I believe the last name some more. Might be getting that wrong.
Went to Virginia Tech.
Yeah,
brought along a couple linemen from last year. I believe Thomas Rymack being one of them.
Yeah, so he goes out. They bring in Bicknell. Like I said, the tie there is Ole Miss. I read an article there. It seemed Rich Rod was most impressed with Bicknell's willingness to learn and to pick up new schemes, offenses, and I think that's something big that he needed in an offensive coordinator or an offensive line coach being the offensive coordinator, because Rich Rod needs somebody who's willing to look at a different run scheme, a different set, because he's innovative. He's an innovator on offense. Rich Rod is. So, well, probably my favorite hire was Jeff Castile. I love bringing him back. I think the last time West Virginia saw a good defense was definitely Jeff Castile. Big, you love to mention the viral clip there, and I believe it was, looking at it today, was the big bowl, the Orange Bowl when we played Clemson.
Yeah, I think it was the Orange Bowl. Yeah, I'll definitely. I have to find it and quote it and put it on our Twitter. Just, I mean, it'll have you ready to run through a wall while you're sitting on your couch.
Yeah, that is.
He just kind of brings that the physical presence. I don't want to say physical, but that mental presence of like, all right, we're here. It's Saturday. It's time to smack somebody in the mouth and go play. You know what I mean? So he's kind of that old school vibe. I think I think is needed.
Another thing to push off that, I think, as good as a defensive coordinator that Zach Alley's proven to be in the past, I think Alley can learn a little bit from Castile because he's a well-rounded. Castile's been around football for a long time, so just seeing things from maybe a different set of eyes, and like you said, the physical nature of football that used to be is something that one guy we know is going to be a fan of, get into later, Fred Perry. The physical nature of football used to be is what I think West Virginia has always had, that little edge on a shoulder, and that's what sets them over the top a lot of times is being a physically dominated team that plays hard. Right, I think that's what we're going to see here, and that's what Castile's going to bring in. Like you said yesterday when we were talking, whenever you're brought in to coach Bandits, your position title is Bandits coach. That's huge, right? I want a guy.
Yeah, I want that guy on my staff.
Yeah, I want a guy. I want to talk football with a guy named Bandits coach. Maybe that'll be something we can get into. Maybe we can get a hold of.
Yeah, I like kind of the merge of Castile. The older mind in the room compared to Zach Alley, more of a young, innovative defensive mind. I think just those two paired together is going to really open some eyes on the defensive side of the ball.
So something we really wanted to hit on today, news came out yesterday, but just looking at it, Pat White is brought in to be the assistant head coach and the assistant quarterbacks coach. I know Rich Rod brought in Rhett as his quarterbacks coach, and just looking at the picture of that, I think some people kind of question the hire. Are you keeping it in the family? What's going on here? I really like the move to bringing in Pat White to solidify your quarterback coaching, and I know you're a big fan of this hire, so let me let you get into this.
Yeah, I mean, first off, you're talking about a guy who played for Rich Rod, knows the system, and is just overall a great football mind. I mean, the guy did play a couple years in the NFL before getting brutally knocked out in his tenure with the Dolphins, I believe it was. But this guy's a fantastic football mind, and it just adds on to this kind of nostalgic feel of the fact that the two quarterbacks who will be competing for QB1 this year, both Jalen Henderson and Nico, both left-handed. I just think Pat White alone is going to raise their level of play so much this season. I was a big fan of this hire. I thought this was kind of the cherry on top to a really good Rich Rod staff. And when obviously the news broke yesterday of this, I thought it couldn't get any better, and it did.
Yep, I agree with that. And what we're going to say here with Pat White, as far as coaching, let's not act like he's a slump of coaching. He's been around the block coaching. I know he coached at I believe Alcorn State. He was with the Los Angeles Chargers. I think their passing game coordinator. So he's been around football. So let's not just say, hey, he got this job because he was a former Mountaineer. He's qualified for the job. Additionally, when you look into it and what he's going to be able to bring to Rhett, Rhett's a young coach, and he's going to be able to show what is expected at not just only the college level, because I believe that's Rhett's stint is at the college level, but what it takes to play professionally. I think that's going to be in a recruiting edge here later, just to be able to see, if we can develop quarterbacks at a high rate. I think it's good for the culture as well, Gage.
Yeah. So Pat White started his coaching career like 2018-19, like you said, quarterbacks coach at Alcorn State, then went on to be the running backs coach at South Florida in 2020, became the intern offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Alabama State in 2021, then the pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Campbell that following year in 2022. So this isn't just like a random pickup hire, like you said, for the nostalgia and for the storyline. Like this guy's a football coach, and he was a damn good quarterback.
So just looking at another one that we want to get into a little bit was not the hire, but the keep of Chad Scott. One thing that you hit on earlier that I really love, there's been a lot of downfalls in West Virginia football that we've seen over the years. But one thing that you always counted on was good running back play, and that's a big part in what Chad Scott was able to bring here. He has proven to be able to coach guys who are athletically superior, and been able to prove guys that maybe don't have the athletic, the speed, those type of things. He can coach both type of guys. Maybe a guy that is superior athletic, but maybe not doesn't know the way to play running back yet. And then additionally, he's able to take a guy who might know how to play running back and doesn't physically meet the standards. He's been proven to be able to take both guys. A guy that you think is going to stick out here is Jaheim White.
Yeah, Jaheim White's going to be a huge benefit. The fact that he stayed, I definitely think some of that had to do with Chad Scott being retained. Jaheim White in this offensive system that Rich Rod is going to implement is going to he's going to well succeed 1,000 yards in this offense this upcoming year, double-digit touchdowns. This guy's primed for a huge year, and you lose CJ Donaldson to Ohio State, and we'll get into the transactions there in the offseason in a little bit, but you replace him with a guy, Ty Edwards from Northern Iowa. This is a more than capable running back room once again, and Chad Scott is going to be thrilled.
Agreed. Just looking at the running back position, a coach I like they added there, a great of West Virginia, another guy who's going to know the culture, what it takes to win here in Morgantown. Noah Devine's added as well. Just looking at that, I actually think he pairs well with Jaheim. I think they have a lot of similar characteristics in how they run the football and big playability. So really interested to see what Noah Devine brings to the table in that running back room.
Yeah, definitely. I'll let you touch on one hire that you really liked was Rod West at cornerbacks before we hop into some of the player transactions.
Yeah, I love the Rod West hire, not only because we needed a change at the defensive back position. Anybody that's watched West Virginia football, avid fans like us, or even somebody who's just a West Virginia resident who flips on the game, you watch it, and if you've watched football before, you're like, man, what is our secondary doing back there? So just bringing in Rod West, a familiar face or a fresh face against what they did have, I really, really, really like the guys that he's been able to bring in. Not saying that he got all the recruits in, but what the cornerbacks are going to look like. I think he's able to schematically change things. And additionally, just looking at him bringing a little piece himself from his previous school, I believe it was Appalachian State.
Yeah, App State.
App State.
He spent 4 seasons as cornerback coach at App State before coming here.
Just looking at that, he was able to bring a key piece, going to be a vital part in our secondary. He was able to bring them with him as well. So I think Rod West looks really good in this foundation that we've brought in.
Yeah, 100%. So let's hop over here, man. First off, let's talk about the losses from this past year, because whether you like it or not, I mean, WVU is losing some key faces and some key players. First one obviously being Garrett Green due to graduation. So let's hop right into the quarterbacks, right? I mean, Nico's coming back, but we also bring in Jalen Henderson from Texas A&M, SEC face. Jalen Henderson did not play this past season due to the fact that A&M rolled out Connor Wegman, who was a 5-star recruit, and Marcel Reed, true freshman, very talented, who ended up being their quarterback one down the stretch, took over. Sneaky Heisman guy there as well. But Jalen Henderson in that 2023 season, he played a couple games, 715 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. This guy, I hate to say it, but he's got a little Pat White look to him when you watch. He is fast, man. He can throw the ball, good arm. He can get outside the offensive line and make some plays with his feet.
Just a thing to mention here, you have to love Nico, Gage. You have to love Nico. Definitely has represented the Mountaineers how you want. Any key, a key vision on the program. He's represented everything, and he's done something that not a lot of quarterbacks do in this age, and that's stay whenever you aren't number one on the roster. I think Nico's waited his turn, but it's going to be a very interesting spring and to see where this quarterback I don't know the word I'm trying to look for here. Maybe like quarterback play in situation. Who's going to get the job, I guess you'd say, but more who's going to understand the offense. I think that's going to be a key part. Both of these guys are athletic. Both of these guys had a lot of recruits coming out of high school. Just looking at them and what fits the scheme, you might look at Jalen Henderson and, man, maybe he fits the scheme, but does Nico understand the offense? Rich Rod has been quoted saying, it doesn't take an athletic quarterback. He just needs a guy that's willing to run. He needs a willing runner. So to see where this quarterback play goes into and what ends up starting the season, we both hit in our schedule, by saying, that first game of the year, we might see both.
Yeah, Robert Morris for sure. Yeah, I wasn't even trying to take anything away from Nico. Nico obviously has not lost a game as our starter dating back to when he first got enrolled here. So this past year started a couple games, 434 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like you mentioned, he's more than capable of handling this job. And the fact that he's waited his turn, he hasn't transferred, he hasn't ran. Yeah, I think with the spring game coming up here, we'll definitely get a chance to see both. But
yeah, this is
to the eye test, I think this would be Nico's job to lose. I really do.
Yeah, this is a big debate on Twitter right now. You see people coming out saying Nico's going to be the starter or Jalen Henderson's going to be the starter. I'm just glad there's a competition at this position, right? Like I'm glad both guys are being.
I'm glad there's a discussion and some debate about it. It feels like it's been a while since that's been the case. But yeah, continuing on, man. I mean, the running back room we already kind of hit on. Jaheim White is going to be a huge benefit from this offense. This guy, man, I actually saw PFF today ranked him as the 10th graded running back returning to college football this year. This guy has a chance, man, he's good. First off, he's going to be playing on Sundays regardless, but this guy has a chance to really raise his stock this year.
Yeah, we're both huge Jaheim fans. Just looking at what he's been able to do. I know offensive line play is going to be something that we've gotten into. We will get into later, and we spoke a little bit about with more leaving, but Jaheim's been able to perform at a high level, right? And we got an addition there. What was your take on the addition?
Yeah, so obviously we lose C.J. Donaldson to Ohio State, C.J. Donaldson and Jahmyr Gibbs, these past couple of years that they were together, you and I talked about it, they reminded me of like the college version of the Detroit Lions. You kind of had the Montgomery type back with Donaldson who was running between the zone, maybe some odd run play designs for him, which I'll let you get on. But he was kind of that Montgomery role, and then you obviously had Jaheim White who fit that more Jahmyr Gibbs scat back role. So I always enjoyed watching them kind of go back and forth in the backfield, toting the rock. But C.J. Donaldson goes on to Ohio State, and we replace him with Ty Edwards from Northern Iowa, 6'4", 230-pound running back who, Noah, this guy, for how big he is, moves extremely well. He's coming off a 1,000-yard rushing season with 6 touchdowns. He's going to be a perfect complementary back to Jaheim White this upcoming year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Watching his tape, I think he's a guy it's kind of interesting, very similar to C.J. Donaldson, and I wonder if Chad Scott had a play in getting him here because he seems like that big, bulky back that's able to get 3 yards, but also there's a little big playability there that we saw with C.J. too.
He's got some burst, man. Ty Edwards has got some burst to him, some sneaky burst.
Yeah, just getting into that, just to clear up for listeners there, Gage did say, I believe, Jahmyr Gibbs in our backfield. He meant Jaheim White, but Jahmyr Gibbs in the lines there. Didn't want to cut you off while you were rolling. Same guy.
No, same guy. It's going to look like we're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield. Yes, I promise you. That's how high I am on Jaheim White. Jaheim White, in terms of NFL, man, he has this Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon A-Chain style play where it's a twitch and bursty type of runner, and at any point can make one cut and just gone. House call at any time.
So just looking at like you were saying there, I had a quick reference to scheme. It seemed last year that I don't know if the backs were utilized correctly because, like we're sitting here saying, anybody that turned on the TV, Jahmyr White's your big playback. Donaldson's your guy, 2-3 yards. You need it. You turn around and hand it off to him.
I got you saying it. Now you said Jahmyr White. Jaheim
White. Sorry, yes. So, just looking at the scheme they were going with last year, I'm watching C.J. Donaldson get outside zone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why are we giving this play to him? Not saying that C.J. Donaldson didn't have the ability to make the play, but when you got a guy as dynamic and as athletic and just can absolutely get to the corner and go, why is that ball not going to Jaheim White?
Yeah, 100%. So going on to the receiving side of things, we lose Traylon Rowe, former 4-star recruit. He transfers to Ole Miss. We lose Hudson Clement, who this past season, 51 receptions, 741 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He transfers to Illinois. We lose Day Farmer to UCF, who I bring him up. He didn't have a ton of stats from this past season, but you and I both agreed he was a very talented receiver, just didn't see the field, which didn't really understand why that was the case. But he goes back home to Orlando. He will be missed. I wish we could have saw him play a lot more.
Especially in this Rich Rod offense, I think that would have been a piece where I think there was some question. I keep hearing Rich Rod say speed, but I think if he was in that receiving core, I don't know if you'd be hearing him say speed because I think that's what Day had.
Yeah, 100%. So Coach Rod goes out. He actually brings in Cam Vaughn from his former school, Jacksonville State, coming off 48 reception, 803 yard, 5 touchdown year. Cam Vaughn is he's very good at creating separation. It seems like anytime I was watching, and sometimes it does help when you come from a run-heavy system. Teams are gearing up for that run, and you get that one-on-one coverage, and you're able to bust off a good route and be wide open. But Cam Vaughn is very talented, and I think he's more than capable of being the wide receiver 1 for this team.
Oh, I agree with that, Gage. I think, like you're saying, when you come from a run-heavy offense, you're looking at, man, can this guy actually get himself open? But the thing is, the scheme isn't going to change, right? You're still going to run a lot of the same things that you got at Jacksonville State. As long as you're able to, and I think that's what we've lacked the past couple years, is if you're able to separate and the quarterback can put the ball on the numbers, I mean, that's a quality receiver, whether it be, 2nd and 8 or 3rd and 14 when you need a first down.
Yeah, definitely. A couple other names to mention: Cyrus Tron from Youngstown State, Gerard Bowie, Martinsburg native, coming back home from Jacksonville State with Rich Rod.
Cyrus is actually from Parkersburg South, so it didn't.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so another West Virginia guy.
2 speedsters as well, right? Both Cyrus and Bowie.
Yep, both
yeah, so some speed on the boundaries here coming up, man, for sure. A late addition, they brought in Jeff Weimer, wide receiver from, I believe it was Idaho State.
I believe so. Yeah,
6'2", 204, so a little bit of a bigger body receiver. But overall, we'll see what receiver. You and I constantly touched on the fact that we felt the wide receiver room was lacking this past year. Didn't have the threat of playmakers, and maybe we did with Day sitting on the bench and Jaden Bray not getting a ton of touches this past year. But that'll definitely be a room I'm interested to see in this upcoming year to see if Rich Rod can unlock some potential there.
Thought it was very interesting to see how Neil Brown has played his receivers previously and what the depth chart looked like. You and I both kind of looked at the situation. We're like, man, why aren't these guys on the field? Why are these guys on the field? Not taking away anything from the guys that were on the field, but I mean, just looking at physical attributes, you're kind of like, man, this guy, what was the guy? Was it Robinson, the guy who catches?
Justin Robinson made an unbelievable catch versus Pitt, and then I'm not sure he played the next 6 games.
Yeah, so just looking at it, I know Jaden Bray was a guy you were really interested in seeing. So,
yeah, like I mentioned, definitely some untapped potential. Still, I'm excited to see what he can do with that room and expecting some big things there. So, no, I'll kind of let you take over on this segment. The offensive line is kind of getting a revamp in terms of this new scheme coming in. They bring in Walter Youngbear from Tulsa, Tykeus Crawford from Arkansas, Will Reed from Princeton, Robbie Martin from NC State. Definitely some name value in these schools that they're bringing in. But don't get it twisted. I mean, these guys are coming in. These are some big body boys, man. They're coming to move the defensive line around and create some holes for Jaheim and Ty Edwards.
I think it's interesting to see in the offensive line play of we've had a very solid offensive line over the past couple years. Obviously, when the offensive line coach goes, a lot of these guys who like the way this guy coaches, we see guys depart. Like you said, Ramak left with Matt Moore at the O-line coach. So you see these guys move, but then you still have to refill, right? So we bring guys in, like you said, Young Bear, who I think is going to be a outstanding addition at the interior offensive line. Don't know if he'll play left or right guard. Robbie Williams, I believe is the name, correct?
Yeah, Robbie Martin.
Sorry.
From NC State.
Robbie Martin, looking at him, a guy who was actually a West Virginia. He's from Huntington, I believe. He played at Huntington High School. Mm-hmm. So looking at a guy, bringing him back, thought it was interesting that we beat out Marshall for him because Tony Gibson and the ties with NC State he had there. So it was very interesting to see. As far as physical and what they look like on tape, Rich Rod understands what he needs in an offensive lineman, and I think that's something that you're going to see. These guys might not have, the Milam, they might not be Frazier, but as long as they work together as a unit, right, and they're able to create creases, create gaps, whatever Rich Rod's seeing in offense and what he wants in that run game, if they're able to capitalize on the key moments and Jaheim pops off a couple, it starts up the whole offense, right? So these guys are going to be a crucial part in what we see offensively for the Mountaineers this year.
Yeah, tight end, you're going to be seeing another Jacksonville State transfer, Jacob Barrick, just coming in. A lot of Jacksonville State guys coming in, but that's no slouch because these guys, Jacksonville State was a really good mid-major school, obviously. So a lot of these guys bringing in will be up to the test for the step up in competition. 2 key losses I want to identify on the defensive side of the ball. Josiah Trotter, obviously a talented freshman for us. He transferred to Missouri. 93 total tackles, half a sack, and 1 interception on the year. And then Trey Latham, who actually transferred in conference to Kansas, coming off 79 tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 interception. So no, any keywords there on Trotter and Latham.
Both guys that you're going to miss. I think something that we all need to realize is secondary play isn't the only reason we were bad in the pass game. Linebackers have to do with that as well. Trotter was phenomenal stopping the run. I didn't love the way he defended on passing downs. Same as Latham. I think Latham was sometimes spotted with a hard job where he's getting a slot receiver coming up the seam, and you're like, what do you want him to do there? Or he's getting the back out of the backfield, and it's just, what do you want? What is success? Why are you putting him in the position to make that play? As you know, the defensive coordinator for West Virginia was fired earlier than Neil Brown last year. So just going to be lost definitely in the run game, but I think we refilled there as well, where you might not have as name-worthy guys, but guys that are going to go out and make plays.
Yeah, I mean, how much of this, the defensive lapses and struggles that we had, how much is that on Jordan Leslie, compared to the players? That's kind of up for debate. But, you lose Trey Latham, who was primary kind of that outside edge, and then Trotter, who you mentioned, really good run stopper. But no, who do you replace him with? A guy you're really excited about, Jamori Robinson, coming in from UTSA, 27 tackles, 10.5 sacks. This guy's a true edge rusher, man. And this was when the portal kind of came down to closing. This was one of the bigger gets. A lot of schools were on this guy, and I don't think WVU fans understand how lucky we are that he chose to come play for us.
Yeah, and I think that's something to look at even as far back as coaching staff is the guys we got into the program now. It wasn't like we were the only team that wanted these guys. There were multiple teams looking at a lot of these guys, but just coming off, like you said, Robinson was a guy that everybody wanted, right? I think it came down between us and Virginia Tech, and he made us wait for a little bit. But very excited to see how he pairs with Zach Alley. Defensive end is going to be a very crucial part in this defense because when you think most of the time we're having 3 down linemen, we're going to send a lot of pressure in weird ways because that's what Zach Alley does. But just looking at him as an edge rusher, as a pure edge rusher, you can't not be excited about this guy.
Yeah, we also had the LSU transfer, Kimo Makalanawe. He's going to the offensive side of the ball,
yeah,
correct?
So last year I believe he played defensive line. He started off as offensive line, but I believe Ole Miss, correct?
LSU.
He started at Ole Miss, I believe, and then he went to LSU. But just looking at him, I think they moved him per needs, right? But I think he's excited to get back on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, name value, man. I mean, LSU to WVU, definitely not something to overlook. So, linebacker, losing Latham and Trotter, you're looking at replacements by Ashton Woods, a freshman from UNC coming in, and then Chase Wilson from Colorado State. And then my favorite part, man, the secondary. You are getting an absolute revamped secondary this upcoming year. They went out this portal and made it a statement to go get some playmakers. Anything you want to say before I go into it?
I think, like you said, just as far as revamp of the face, we look completely different back there, and I think that's something that we can all appreciate because what we've endured the past few seasons. Like I went into, we were speaking about it the other day. Beanie Bishop was a guy who made plays, but outside of that, I don't think we've had a guy where you're like, man, you can't throw his way. And I hope with the new faces in here, that's something we're able to do.
Yeah. So going around here about who they brought in, let's start with Michael Coach Jr. first, cornerback from Nevada, kind of a diamond in the rough in terms of Nevada didn't really have a good year this past year, but Michael Coach is going to be a boundary corner who may not be as talented in the physical as far as stopping the run and stuff like that, but we're talking about a cornerback with true lockdown potential. This guy can be step for step with any receiver in the Big 12, and you're going to pair him up alongside on the other side, Derek Carter Jr. from Jacksonville State. This guy as well was a freshman All-American coming from Jacksonville State. The same thing. Those two guys in the boundary are going to be causing problems all year long in the Big 12.
Yeah, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. Just looking at these two guys and looking at potential, and not only potential, but then you put them in Zach Alley's defense, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what he's able to do. And just watching a little bit of Zach Alley, more when he was at Jacksonville State than Oklahoma, because Zach Alley, yes, he was defensive coordinator, but he was co-defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. So not saying that he got to run the full things that he did, but it was very interesting to see if you go back and watch tape on Zach Alley at Jacksonville State, just looking at the pressure he brings and how that benefits the secondary.
Yeah. Also bring in Jordan Scruggs from Southern Alabama. He's going to kind of play that safety / nickel role, so he'll be kind of moving around the secondary.
He might have been the first commit to West Virginia, actually.
I believe he was. He as well is just super talented. Devonta Golden Nelson from Akron, who I thought was kind of a sneaky get, similar to Michael Coach Jr. Akron. I could be wrong on this, but maybe not the best of seasons this past year, but he had a very good year. And then, man, let me get into it. Fred Perry, brother. For WVU fans who enjoyed the time of Carl Joseph, welcome back, because this guy is Carl Joseph 2.0. This is a hybrid safety, Noah, who's going to come down in the box and stuff runs as well as make plays in the secondary. This guy's going to be all over the place, and I really expect him to kind of embrace this face of the defense. I think when you're watching WVU games this upcoming season, Fred Perry's going to be a name that you're hearing on almost every single play.
Yeah, after watching highlights of him at Jacksonville State, I mean, if there was an NIL deal for hard hits, this guy would probably be a millionaire right now, right? He seeks contact. He doesn't run away from it. He's a downhill safety. He'll come up and hit you in the mouth. I'm excited to see, and like you said, just remembering Carl Joseph and some of the hits he had. I mean, he has an absolute amazing highlight tape. Just looking at Carl Joseph, I'm excited to see this guy, and excited to see this guy play downhill, but excited to see what Zach Alley has drawn up for him, because this is a special talent you have here.
Yeah, absolutely. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Perry come down and play some linebacker here and there on some pass down. Yeah, on some pass down rolls and something like that. He's 5'11", 200 pounds, but there's not many guys in football at the college level that can send opposing teams' players out on a stretcher. And Fred Perry has that gift because of how hard he'll come down and hit you.
Yeah, I think he's going to be an X factor. And, outside of scheme, whatever you want to draw up defensively, if a running back knows that guy's waiting on the other side of the line of scrimmage, I mean, I'm not running to his side, right? I'm not running to his side. There's very few guys that you look at and you're like, man, but this is a guy that you wait. And when we're in Milan Pushker on September 13th, I'm ready to hear the pads clack, and I know he's going to be one of the first guys.
Yeah, you'll be able to hear him for sure. I think as far as, just some of the key transfers that we brought in, we really touched on them all. I think the overview right now, obviously gearing up for that spring game where we'll kind of get to see some faces and introduction, but definitely excited, man. It just seems like WVU football is now rebranded. There's a new step led by Coach Rich Rod, who I believe, he's here to make things right, man. A lot of controversy coming back. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. This guy came back for a reason. He's here to deliver wins.
Yep. I think that, and it's like you said, fresh faces everywhere. We're going to get to learn a new team. We're going to get to grow in the Rich Rod era. I really am excited about West Virginia football, where it's going to go, and just really the season. Just to kick it off here, Gage, or get out of here on it, what do you think, what transfer in player do you think has the biggest impact on the Mountaineers this year?
Yeah, so I give you two. Defensive side of the ball, obviously my number one pick would be Fred Perry, as I just kind of went on my highlights about him. But if I had to pick somebody outside of him, definitely Jamori Robinson. This guy off the edge, man, is just going to be a true game changer and a potential game wrecker in terms of, if a team we're playing gets down big and they have to throw the ball. Anytime he's one-on-one with a tackle, it seems to be automatic either pressure or sack. This guy, he's going to be all over the place as far as defensive line. And we see how important that is watching this past Super Bowl. If you can get to the quarterback, it doesn't matter what you have schemed up because nothing's going to open up because of the time that you have.
Yes, sir. I would
agree with
that.
Yeah, and then offensively, quarterback's still up for debate. We'll see who happens. I'm definitely excited about Jalen Henderson, but I'm also excited about Nico. So I actually am probably going to pass this to Ty Edwards. I just think, yes, the loss of C.J. Donaldson to Ohio State is huge, but when WVU fans really get to watch Ty Edwards tote the rock, we're going to see some special things paired up with Jaheim White, a.k.a. Jahmyr Gibbs. So those are probably the two I'm really most excited about. Similar for you, or you got somebody different in mind?
I got defensively Chase Wilson, linebacker from Colorado State. Watched his tape and really excited to see what he brings to the table. A lot of the other positions like defensive end like Robinson, I think there will be a little bit of a step up in talent that he's going against at tackle. But I think linebacker is something where you seek ball, find ball, hit ball. That's what he's going to do. I think he's going to be able to bring that in there. Then also offensively, I think Jared Bowie. Jared Bowie's going to be a guy
sneaky.
That is
sneaky.
Going to play that little slot receiver, something that is very interesting. I saw him play the bowl game against Ohio with Jacksonville State. Speed. He's got speed, and I'm just really excited to see him on a Mountaineer football field.
Yeah, definitely excited. I know you and I are going to definitely try and go to that spring game and kind of get a feel for things. But a lot of buzz, man, a lot of buzz. So college football will be coming up quick. I know obviously the Super Bowl just ending. Everybody's waiting around for football now, but we'll keep you covered in the meantime.
Yes, sir. Like always, like, subscribe, comment if you have any questions. hopefully get out some videos with some player interviews, maybe even coaches. Would love to get Castile on here just to see what he has to say. So just like I said, like, subscribe, let us know if you have any questions, and follow the socials. Kick off the tip off on everything. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.